I filmed a house that shouldn't exist. 24 hours later, it didn't. Footage shows a roofline between the pines, fresh tire ruts, a lit window at dusk, then nothing but scrub and sand the next day. Tonight, the permit records, the power meter, and the neighbor who swears she heard a piano at midnight. The developer who filmed it calls himself Mason, a 32-year-old with a Part 107 license and a library of tidy plats, parcel maps, and deeds bookmarked on his tablet. He builds tasteful mid-market homes and proves it by pointing his drone where most of us never look, at easements, drainage, and fence lines that run straighter on paper than on Earth. On a windless Sunday in May, he flew a routine mapping mission over a forested tract slated for a 6-lot subdivision on the edge of a lake community that the listing called minutes from town, but felt an hour from anywhere. Mason's flight plan was basic. Grid, 200 feet AGL, 70/70 overlaps, automated. He was after grading estimates and the shade analysis, not spectacle. But midway through the second leg, the drone's camera swept left and a shape broke the rhythm. An A-frame roof, cedar shakes gone gray, set back in a natural clearing that didn't appear in his GIS layer. The house sat outside any recorded footprint, 40 yards beyond a rotting fence. A single window burned amber against the dark of the trees. Mason marked a waypoint and dropped altitude. He was cautious. In this state, trespass laws apply to drones the way they do to boots, a debate greased by cases that never quite settle the issue. Mason stayed above the tree line, captured a short oblique, and returned to his transects. He logged the anomaly as structure unmapped. 4 minutes of footage, no attempts to peek inside, no hero moves. He went home, offloaded tiles, stitched a rough ortho mosaic, and took a second look. The roofline looked old, but the driveway didn't. Faint tire treads, 2 patterns, one wide and ribbed, one narrow and smooth, curving in and out of the trees. That night, Mason couldn't let it go. Property lines are his North Stars, and this house was a wandering one. He pulled county parcels, cross-referenced assessor rolls, and stared at a rectangle of land that showed no improvements, no permits, and taxes paid on timber value only. He noted an old subdivision plan from the late 1970s that labeled the area Common Green. Then he zoomed across satellite layers year by year, clear ground, then trees, then a flash of lighter pixelation 12 months ago that might be a tarp or might be nothing at all. At 7 a.m., Monday, before crews and questions, Mason drove out alone with a thermos and a plan. Stay on the public right-of-way, never cross a fence, film from the air, then ask the county. He parked in the same turnout. The forest felt rearranged as if someone had lifted it and set it back down a degree to the left. He launched, climbed to 175 feet, and flew the same leg. The waypoint hung on his screen as a ghostly dot. When he arrived at it, the house wasn't there. The clearing was a thicket, young pine, scrub oak, disturbed soil like healed skin. The tire ruts were gone. No window light, no driveway, just a perfection of absence. Mason landed, set the controller on his lap, and listened. A woodpecker tattled. A distant outboard coughed on the lake. No piano, no chainsaw. He whispered his own timestamp, Monday, 7:42, and filmed the empty trees. Then he did what any developer with insurance does. He called his lawyer. Mason's attorney, Perez, told him to document, not speculate. So he did. At 9:13 a.m., he filed a planning inquiry with the county's online portal, attaching stills and coordinates. By noon, he was in a fluorescent hallway, smelling of toner, requesting a permit search at the counter. The clerk, who had seen everything twice, typed the parcel ID and frowned. No structures on record. Last activity, 1978. Proposed greenway easement, never finalized. She handed him a thin manila folder with maps that predated the digital era and a stamped denial from 47 years ago. Pause and reflect. Permits are history's receipts. When a building has no paper trail, either it never existed or it wasn't meant to. Mason drove to the utility office. He asked politely if there had been power usage associated with the coordinates. The rep couldn't disclose customer data, but she did offer a public fact. The nearest meter on that road had a usage anomaly Sunday between 7 and 8 p.m., a spike and then a flatline. It wasn't proof of anything, but it was a rhythm that matched Mason's flight. Back at the Lake Road, he knocked on the nearest house with a mailbox and an unambiguous driveway. A woman in her 60s, call her Luann, opened the door with the chain on. She studied Mason's business card longer than necessary, then unlatched the chain. When he asked about the A-frame, Luann didn't blink. "Sometimes it's there," she said. "Sometimes it isn't." Mason waited, but she didn't elaborate. "Last night," she added, "I heard a piano. Moonlight sonata, not well, the kind children learn. Came from up near the ridge where there's nothing but trees." Mason noted dates. The 1978 denial matched the file. The fire, no record in the fire department's digitized incidents, but the clerk warned him older paper logs lived in a basement no one loved. He visited anyway. The chief on duty, a collector of belt buckles and local grudges, dug out a ledger and found a smudged entry from October 12, 1979. Brush fire near Section 14, no fatalities, structure involvement, unknown coordinates, approximate. Now the story branched. Either Mason filmed a surviving structure that had slipped through the bureaucratic net, or he filmed a place that exists only in certain conditions, a mirage of weather, an angle, and wishful thinking. He returned that evening with a ground camera and stood at the tree line. The forest returned his stare. At 8:11 p.m., a wind moved through like someone shushing a child. A path that wasn't a path appeared to him, the way grasses sometimes mark a trail. He didn't follow. He launched instead. At 160 feet, a geometry formed in the canopy, young trees in an oval where old ones should be. He circled, and for 3 seconds the gimbal caught that amber window again, set in the same triangular face of roof, the same angle as his still. He froze the frame, tagged the coordinates, and watched the pixels stutter, adjust, and correct the image into trees. He replayed the clip. There, then not. He laughed once without humor and said to the empty air that he'd bring witnesses tomorrow. Tension peak 1. When he posted the still to a local forum, a retired surveyor DM'd him. "That clearing sits on a deed overlap, 2 plats with claims that never reconciled. People built in the cracks back then, never got a certificate of occupancy. When the timber company replatted, 6 places like that were left off the map. Some got bulldozed, some burned. There were rumors. The rumors had edges. A 1980 clipping from the weekly paper, browned and scanned poorly, mentioned a dispute between private owners and the newly organized land trust, an injunction, and a hearing that was canceled when interested parties failed to appear. Then nothing. The couple Luann remembered were only names in yearbook margins, the kind people who accompany children through their scales and are forgotten as soon as the recital ends. Tension peak 2. On Tuesday at 6:58 p.m., with Luann and the surveyor standing 6 feet apart at the turnout, Mason launched again. He pushed the waypoint, descended to just above the treetops, and rotated. The A-frame rose from the green like a ship from fog. 3 witnesses saw it together. Not an illusion of screen or software, but a house with cedar shakes, the corner where the gutter sagged, a porch with 2 chairs and a blanket thrown carelessly or carefully over the arm. As the drone hovered, the porch light blinked on. In the same breath, the surveyor whispered, "I smell smoke," and the house dimmed to trees. The recording captured it all. 11 seconds of porch, a light that shouldn't have power, a blanket that shouldn't be dry. On Wednesday morning, the county planner called Mason back. She had pulled a microfilm reel no one had touched in decades. "Found something odd," she said. A 1979 emergency variance approved under protest for a temporary music studio pending resolution of a boundary action, signed by a clerk who later resigned. The variance expired in 90 days. No final inspection, no closure letter. The studio by law never existed. That afternoon, a storm massed over the lake. Mason set up a tarp beside Luann's truck bed and waited with a second drone and a fresh SD card. The surveyor brought a tripod and a theodolite like talismans. At 7:21 p.m., the first drops fell. Mason launched into a soft rain and held station at 150 feet. The trees shivered. The oval in the canopy steadied. And then, not a blink, not a flicker, just a slow bleed emergence. The A-frame filled itself in. On the porch sat a dark, upright piano stool. No piano, as if the instrument had been dragged inside. A shape moved behind the amber window, thin, hesitant. The porch light flared. Mason's ground mic, set to low, caught Luann's breath. "Don't go," to no one in particular. He panned. The gimbal stabilized, struggled, then settled. The roof carried a burn scar, a long char along the ridge like a healed wound. The rain thickened, and water ran in bright slips down the shingles. The porch chair rocked once in windless air. The light died. He dropped altitude, flirting with line-of-sight loss, feeling the edge of what his license and his instincts allowed. For a moment, he saw more. Walls inside, a framed recital program dated October 10th, 1979, and a metronome pyramid on the sill. He took a still. On the next frame, trees. He climbed and backed off, and on the playback, each frame that held the house was bracketed by compression noise, as if the software couldn't decide which world to keep. The reveal Mason didn't want arrived in the mail Thursday. A letter from an attorney representing an old timber subsidiary that had morphed through mergers into a modern holding company. It demanded he cease flights over private lands and alleged he had captured proprietary images. Attached was a scanned chain of title that included a deed tucked inside a 1981 settlement, referring to improvements destroyed by act of God. The settlement named a couple, both music teachers, both marked not present. The check had been issued to a trust no one could locate. The second reveal came from the fire ledger. The chief texted Mason a photo of a marginal note on the 1979 entry. Structure alight on arrival, piano heard, no occupants, fire advanced beyond. Control line. Cause undetermined, the page bore a smear that might have been water, might have been coffee, might have been a thumb on a humid night. In the immediate aftermath, Mason did the one thing that felt decent. He drove to the lake road without his drone and stood at the edge of the oval. He brought no cameras, no witnesses. He closed his eyes and listened to the trees, the rain still dripping from somewhere above, though the sky was clear now. He heard birds. He heard tires on the highway a mile away. And once, so soft he wasn't sure he hadn't manufactured it, he heard a single metronome click. He filed his footage with the county under the heading, Potential Unrecorded Structure Anomaly, Safety Concern. Knowing how absurd that sounded, he archived copies with his attorney, and he stopped flying over the ridge at dusk. The lot will become 6 homes if the market holds. In one of them, perhaps, a child will practice a halting tune in a living room with a decent view of the lake. In the months after Mason's footage made the rounds of planning meetings and neighborhood threads, nothing official changed. No new permits appeared, no plaques went up. But the county quietly digitized the old ledgers, and the planner instituted a practice. Before any subdivision approval near legacy parcels, staff checked paper-era variances and boundary disputes. Legally, it's housekeeping. Humanly, it's an apology that no one will ever read. There is a reason people tell stories about houses that linger where they shouldn't. Structures caught between maps, between owners, between decisions made on a rainy night when a meeting was canceled and no one showed. If a house can be both there and not there, what does that make of the lives that fit inside it? The practice scales, the coffee rings, the fight about whether to stay or go. The question isn't whether Mason filmed a ghost. It's whether our records of each other are sturdy enough to hold the weight of what we owe.
Don't forget to subscribe to Real Mystery Reports for more strange, dark, and profoundly human stories. New true mysteries every day.